As you see, I'm back in the saddle over here in the studio after probably about a month of preparing and putting together the show. I just uploaded 2 videos, and one of them is the show. It represents before anybody showed up, basically. I went through and let you see. You know, it's like, what does the show look like? It's in London, Ontario. And I'm going to make a quick commentary about that video. And my previous video, I posted 2 today, and I thought I'd make a little bit of a ramble. As you see in the back here, I'm revisiting some of my older work based on sculptures, actually, of the Barbie doll. Do I have any of those? I think so. Yeah, here's one. Anyway, I did some very quirky looking casts. I sculpted in clay and then cast these Barbies. This is like a perverse sort of combination. And then I made some paintings as well. And I'm having some reflections, and the show is only up for a couple of weeks. And the town of London is a parochial place. It's a small mentality kind of town. There's only 2 serious private galleries. One is called Gibson Gallery. The other is Tealson Gallery. They have two museum, a larger one called Museum London and a smaller one called Mackintosh Gallery, which is attached to the University of Western Ontario. And they all know that this work is going up because either the gallery informed them, gave them the information, the catalog to the show, which is also, it's a nice little catalog they made. It's Thomas Ackerman out of the blue, and you know, has pictures in it. So they have this information, and they didn't show up. And none of the people that might follow me on my YouTubes, none of them showed up. Actually, only 2 of art colleagues came to the show. None of my artist friends showed up that I have known in the area where I'm painting for the last 20 years. Okay. I am not discouraged. I am motivated to continue because the issue is so powerful, just even in terms of activating our own spirit, our own passion. I think this is what the exercise is. The fact that the trees are falling in the forest is not a discouragement to me, in the sense that in order for each one of us to get through life the best way we can, and some people have more of a commitment and a mission towards something. And having done my work for almost 45 years, I'm not discouraged. I keep going, but I am aware that this is, and I think it's not by intent all of it necessarily, but there is an ambiance created when you deal with a certain topic, with a certain subject, when you present yourself in your nature, in my nature. I say things, I communicate things through my paintings, through my words, and it pisses people off, or it puts them off, or it makes them feel like they don't want to be part of that. And this is a result. It's a pretty isolated kind of thing to deal with the topic of Fukushima and the fallout from Fukushima and what's going on in the Pacific. And these paintings, basically, I had to say, they were fundamentally influenced by what's happening in the Pacific Ocean. That it is my conviction, based on information and research done by a person called Dana Durnford and other news coming out associated with the results and consequences of a nuclear plant blowing up with 3 full core meltdowns in their reactors. What's my conclusion? What's your conclusion? How do you look at information like that coming out? How can you actually even question that there are going to be consequences, particularly since Chernobyl, which was in 1986, 30 years ago, you had a reactor that is still you still need to put a sarcophagus over it, which blows, well, not blows up, but which disintegrates every 25 or 30 years. So we'll have to keep putting a sarcophagus over Chernobyl, which was a tiny fraction of what Fukushima is. So why would I say, well, nobody has really reported on it in the mainstream, so it must be okay? No, I don't work that way. I think in my own terms, in my own way. I have my opinions, and everything that I express, I guess, are my opinions, because like you heard on one of the things, the radio guy says, I have no credibility. Just like all the artists in history. Vincent has no credibility. Oh yeah, no, just as an artist he has credibility. Well, what is that credibility as an artist? What, has he come up with some sort of magnificent rendering of the meaning of the universe in terms of his ability to put on certain shapes and lines and colors and drawings? No, he speaks to a fundamental essence of our nature, our spirit. This is what the credibility, the ultimate credibility, what makes everything go, what makes me go, what makes everything go. That's the art. That's how I look at it. So in my last post, and I contacted about 8 or 9 people in the radio, broadcasting, television industry, and even one Kojiko who came to do a documentary in my studio on me, never returned my calls. And the only hope I have left is that the University of Western Ontario in London, they have a radio station, 94.9 CHKW or something, and they have a couple of hosts that have talked midday. I haven't heard from them, but the show is still on, so let's see if they respond, what they do. Now, maybe I'm all wrong about this, but from what I recall in the 70s, 80s, in terms of people that I knew that were producing work and were making paintings or making art, and if they were in any kind of way presenting a controversy, something that was, in their opinion, in their research, in their discovery, controversial, there would have been quite a number of interested broadcasters, writers, the way people wrote in the 50s, like Thomas Hess or even Greenberg, Rosenberg, art writers, but beside the art writers, even just newscasters wanting to get the scoop on something. I remember there was a very controversial show at a gallery called the Isaacs Gallery in the early 70s or late 60s, early 70s in Toronto. That was shut down for its controversial content, and it created such a buzz around it. The artist became very well known because he had opened up a rather ugly, I don't know how to call it. He was making sculptures of the early days of the sculptures that were reproducing reality in their figures, in their life-size resin. They used resin, and it looked just like a person was standing next to you, and he'd done a bunch of stuff with that was quite grotesque and vulgar anyway. They tried to shut him down, but he got notoriety, and there were always people looking for a scoop on something. And I find this quite curious that it's not something I'm looking for, but I'm working on a topic, on a subject that has been completely, totally shut down on every level that you could imagine. Even within the venue of what we consider to be galleries and museums that pride themselves of expressing the unexpressible, whatever that might be, whatever that might happen to be. Now, it's not that the work that you might see in museums isn't at times quite vulgar and disgusting, but there is nothing of value in just producing something that is vulgar or disgusting for the sake of it. Like Kandinsky said, art for the sake of art is pure decoration. And I see these vulgarities, what I call idiosyncrasies, that are reproduced on gallery or museum walls. They may have some sort of fancy for 8 people, but the rest of the millions that might have some get something out of it, it's totally like meaningless. It has no significance. So if I propose that there is something major happening in the Pacific Ocean, and it's considered to be, like you heard in one of the things, a conspiracy. I'm part of a conspiracy. But nonetheless, in the old days, there were people within the community that said, hey, this guy is maybe totally full of shit, but I'm going to check this out, and maybe I can get some viewers and listeners on it. But no, not at all. This isn't how it works anymore. Because there is an implicit fear. And I have felt this, like I'm sure many people who have the desire to become involved or speak out, even just to speak out, to have an opinion. These are my opinions. These are my opinions. So to have this opinion becomes very radical and threatening to a system that is trying to protect itself. That's the only explanation I have, that there wouldn't be an interest. And then in the case of Durnford, of course, he is thrown in front of the courts and he has to defend himself without a public prosecutor or even a lawyer taking his case. Well, what the heck is that about? He says no lawyer wanted to take his case. People, this is very unsettling and unnerving to those who still think that we have a system that is fundamentally based on the sovereignty and freedom of an individual. That we don't have the First Amendment, but we have a constitution here that actually guarantees rights and freedoms, obligations and freedoms. I don't know what they call it, the Constitution in Canada. And under this Constitution, there is a clause that allows freedom of speech, to have an opinion. I have my opinion about what's going on, but no longer, because this opinion is becomes something that is not perceived as maintaining a system that I say, a culture that is fundamentally oriented towards death. How else can you say, how else can you describe a culture that will be silent if, in my opinion, the Pacific Ocean is being destroyed and nobody wants to hear about it, then this culture has no credibility even to look for the outliers, the people, as Malcolm Gladwell, the Philip Morris sponsored writer from Canada. He was like the guys that ride in buggies behind horses, Hutterites or whatever they are in Kitchener. He comes out of that society and he's been absorbed by Philip Morris and the cartel, the smoking cartel, to write books on outliers. He's writing on the people that I feel are the ones we need to listen to. And of course, he hijacked all that outlier thing into his Hollywood shit about the 3 Hollywood great mayor, Goldwyn, what was the other guy? Goldwyn Mayer and another one, all grew up within 30 miles of each other in Poland. And he writes about that.'re the outliers. They're the ones we pay attention to. But he didn't talk about Vincent. He didn't talk about Vincent and his outlier, the premier outlier, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of somebody that exhibited extraordinary insight into our spirit, into our nature. Like many other artists, Vincent's not the only one. I talk about Goya or Giotto, people that had a fundamental credibility from the point of view that they revealed something about our nature that makes us work. And what I say in this culture, the reason I flare up about all this stuff is because I see it's not working. It's the simplest way of saying it. It's not working. It's not working. And people that say it's not working are peripheralized, are sidelined, and worse, they're taken into court. They're peripheralized in whichever way, and the ultimate is obviously that they're actually killed. Like you have people that speak out, like Aaron Swartz or Breitbart, or people that have still a conscience and have trust in a system that will protect them because it's guaranteed within their constitution. But we can no longer rely on the Constitution, obviously, because people are very afraid. I noticed this in my own minimal way, in my small way, and I'm in no way out there like Durnford and other activists, other people. I just came across someone who is an anti-nuclear activist, Angela Bishop in Toronto, and she was associated with people, and I think her husband even, who suffered greatly for putting out this information to people, that we need to keep the spirit alive and not be afraid. We need to keep the spirit alive and not be afraid. And for me to put on a show and go through all the difficulty and putting it all together, which I enjoy actually as well. I enjoy doing it, and it's important. No matter if only one person shows up, it's important to actually maintain and continue. So my thoughts is that I'm not discouraged. Obviously, I'm looking for a better result than what is happening, at least from the point of view that people within the framework of art would have still some curiosity left to check out what somebody who's out on a limb, who is a conspiracy guy making paintings, and the greatest paintings, I think, come out of those conspiracy types. Conspiracy in the sense that they're the most radical and the most daring, not with vulgarities, but with something of value that everybody can share. Anyway, I just thought I'd make this, I'm back in the studio and I'm gonna revise, I'm gonna work on my weird Barbies. I'm gonna, yeah, do a bit of work on it. Don't be afraid. Do I have it? Don't be afraid. No. That's good too. No noose is good news, or no noose is good truth.